Rose. Welcome to another Soulful Conversation with real live members, real live soulful heroes. And it is my pleasure, my delight to share with you a dearly beloved friend, Tina Kelly Green, photographer, artist, grandmother, Rosen practitioner, transformational bodywork practitioner, and essential motion practitioner. Thank you, Tina. Thanks so much for being here with us.
Thank you, Christian. It's wonderful to be here with you today. Looking forward to this time.
Good. And one of the things that I wanted to speak with you about today was based on a conversation we had some months ago. And so we're titling our conversation today, Dropping Under the Current, Creativity and Presence. And one of the things I wanted to discuss with you is how do we access creativity? What is the role that presence, that being present, plays in the creative process?
Well, the first thing when you were talking about presence, the first thing that came to my mind was something that my husband used to speak about often. And it was from a sign that he saw in Las Vegas. And this sign said, "You have to be present to win." And so, yeah, I mean, it's absurd, of course, because of course you have to be present to win. But it's true in life, if we're not showing up for ourselves and for everything that's around us, we're not going to move forward. I mean, clearly, if you think about it, creativity only happens in the now. It's now. I'm sure that George Carlin could do a wonderful riff on presence and the now. He probably has. I'm standing in front of a beautiful flower, and my thoughts go to, what am I having for dinner?
Right.
How can I be present with what's in front of me when my thoughts are moving into the future?
To that point, I remember that when we first started speaking about this, what triggered the conversation was my admiring that photograph behind you, which is one of my favorite works of art that you've created. And it looks like a cross, but tell us about that. Tell us about what it is first, describe it for us. And then let's talk about how this conversation about being present allowed you or guided you or made it possible for you to capture this amazing image.
It's interesting because, yes, it does look like a cross. It's not a cross. It wasn't a cross when I saw it. When I saw it, what I saw was color. What I saw was shapes, forms. I was really drawn to the color. It's part of a window. It's a very old window, and it's out at a place called China Camp, close by here in Marin County. And I was out there photographing one day, and the sun, it was the afternoon, and the sun just happened to be shining in a particular way. And the glass in the window caught the sunlight. I've never seen it again look that way. I've been out there many times. It was just that one day, at that one particular moment, just that being present again. I happened to see it. And so I raised my camera and I took a number of images. This isn't even the way that I took the image. Once I had it in my computer, I turned it a couple of times, and I ended up with what you see here. Somebody else dubbed it the rugged cross because that's what they saw. And people like to name things.
Yeah.
We all like to assign a name to it. So now all I can see is the rugged cross because it has a name put to it, which is part of the reason why I don't like naming things, because I think then it leads a person to see more limited, a little bit more. It limits sometimes when we name. I would like people to be able to see as much as they possibly can without having to assign something to it. But anyway, that was what happened. It was the sun, it was the particular time, it was a moment in time, and I was attracted to it. And there you go. I didn't really do much to it.
And what may not come across in through Zoom is the brilliance and the depth and the richness of the colors. There's this beautiful deep green and reds and ochre and coppery and gold and yellow, and it really conveys such a beautiful.
But if I do, that's not going to do it, is it? You can't see it.
It doesn't capture the colors. It doesn't capture the colors at all.
No, it doesn't.
But what made me think about what I was thinking about as you were describing that moment is how present you had to be. How many times had you walked by there before and after, not even noticing that window? How many people had walked through that window and not even noticed it? And so it was that moment of presence,
right,
that allowed you to see this, what's become this amazing photograph that so many people fall in love with.
Right, that's true. It is. It's being with ourselves in the now and seeing what's right in front of us. So it's not being in our heads, seeing something in the past or in the future. It's being in the moment and seeing what's literally right in front of us, or what's right inside of us at that moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a beautiful. Say more about that. What is that? What do you mean by that? Does that, what we see externally, evoke or it trigger something inside of us? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, it can. And often I think we're touched and excited by things more often than we're even aware of, because something comes across in front of our awareness, and we're thinking or wanting to be on to the next whatever it is, and that in that fleeting moment we've lost something that was maybe a little gem, a little gift in the moment. And sometimes if we're lucky enough, we grab hold of it, and
for which we have to be present.
Yes.
And let's talk about, to that point, because this totally connects. The other story that inspired this conversation was you were telling me about an experience you had scuba diving.
Right.
So tell us about that.
Well, as I recall, there are a couple of things that we were talking about. And one had to do with a deep dive that we were diving in heavy currents. And our dive instructor was not too concerned about the currents. We were a little bit concerned because, a current can take you away. You have all these stories going on. Talk about not being present. We weren't grounded in ourselves. We're already thinking we're going to be, somewhere off and lost forever. But, our dive instructors were very, very present to themselves. And that instills some, a feeling of safety with us and trust. And so we listened to them, and we were able to go down the anchor line. We would hold on to the anchor line. Our bodies were kind of floating out, like flags would in the wind. So we could feel the current, but when we got to a particular point where they had already pre-instructed us to let go of the rope and propel ourselves downward, which we did, they assured us that we would go under the current. And we did. We were able to go underneath this fast-moving current and find ourselves in somewhat of a neutrally buoyant place underneath all of this. The boat's above us, the currents are going by, but there we are, sitting undisturbed, sitting cross-legged. So it was
I love that.
It was I did too. We all did.
And because it's such a metaphor for life. Like if we only pause and go within and get present with ourselves, that's how we drop into the drama and the distractions and the push and pull and the arguments and the to-do list, and we drop into ourselves under the current of
Yeah.
life.
Yeah, it's a centering. It's a
Yeah.
centering process, where we literally, if we can do that, if we can quiet ourselves and come back to ourselves, then we come into our core, and we're able to be still, and then receive whatever is there for us to receive.
Yeah, and that's such a beautiful image, that underneath all the drama and all that self-inflicted fear-based stuff inside of your heads, once you were able to do that and move into a place of trust and let go, then you dropped under all the drama of the currents and found this place of perfect stillness.
Yes. Yes. And so the other point that I was talking about with you, as I recall, was it was same dive trip, a different day, and there was an opportunity to go to the Blue Hole in Belize, the area of Belize. And that's a very famous dive spot. People love to go there. They love to say they've been there. But the reality is yes, it's nice to say, oh yeah, I've been there. But what it is spending a whole day getting to it and coming back from it, and then using all of your air in your tank to just dive into this blue space. And that's it. So our dive master suggested that perhaps, if we would like, he would take us to some wonderful coral heads, and we could spend the day just watching what was happening in those neighborhoods. I mean, and they're literally neighborhoods. And so each of us, we did opt for that. And we found our way down to somewhere around 30 feet under water, and all these coral heads, and they just looked kind of ordinary. But we, again, were listening to the dive master, and we found our way to kind of a neutral, buoyant, cross-legged position, lotus position. And we sat there, literally suspended in the water, and watched what was happening on each of these coral heads. And there was so much life going on. It was like being in a metropolitan city. It was quite shocking to see these little creatures coming in and out, all the different types of fish. I can't even remember how many there were, and little plants, things growing off the coral, opening and closing and opening and closing. And we literally could have spent the whole day, just each of us at our own little station. The symbiotic relationships became clear, things that we would have, if we hadn't been instructed or offered this opportunity, we would have just swam by, in our dive, going off to a destination, going off somewhere, instead of sitting still and being with. And we do that in life. We're always going somewhere, here or there, instead of stopping and centering and being with. So, yeah.
And I love that such a powerful metaphor too, because you're right. How much do we miss? Because we're always doing, or going, and missing so much that's right in front of us. Like even what you're talking about, it's just sitting in front of like one spot,
Right.
and how much you would have missed otherwise. This whole neighborhood of activity.
That happened to us. I'm just going to do a little segue, because I'm thinking about going to Muir Woods one time with a friend, and he had never been to Muir Woods before. And it's a beautiful spot here in Marin County, and a major landmark, actually. But we're walking along.
And we should say, for people who may not know, that it's one of the redwood forests that is most accessible to the city of San Francisco.
Absolutely. And if you're ever out here, make it a point to go.
Yes.
But we're walking along, and we noticed kind of an orange color on some of the fence posts that we were walking past. And we decided to look a little closer, and it turned out it was ladybugs.
Huh.
Now, I don't know whether you've ever seen ladybugs swarm.
No.
But I had never seen it before either. And this person had not seen it before. And fortunately, somebody came by who knew what was happening, and they were actually mating. And it's a normal thing for them to do. And there are thousands of them, literally thousands of ladybugs. We could have walked right past that whole scene that would have been gone the next week, or maybe even the next day. I don't know, what
the next hour.
The next day. Well, yeah. But, it was just because we were walking slowly and we were looking around at everything that we happened to see this.
And being present.
And being present to it. Yeah.
And if you hadn't been present, you would have missed the ladybug orgy.
That's right.
Imagine
and so
that.
other people that we, of course, called over and said, hey, look at this, because other people were walking right by.
Look at that.
Yeah.
So what we can say then is that presence is sexy.
There you go. And we love sexy.
We do. We do. And one of the things that comes to mind as we're talking is that you're of a certain age. You've lived a very fruitful life, and yet you're doing these amazing things, and you're so active, and you're a photographer, and you've got your spiritual practices, and you're still very much engaged in growth, personal growth and transformation. So talk about the aging process and how to do it gracefully with presence.
I think you just said it. I mean, really, it is, it's being present. It's not resisting. I think it's engaging. Gratitude is a big piece, I think, of aging. Hopefully we're doing it all along, but I think as we get older, I think we understand more about how much there is to be grateful for in our lives. It's the gratitude, it's being with. I know that there's a lot of other things I'm not touching right at the moment, but
you're capturing it. And I mean, because I know, and I know that people who are older chronologically, but don't have the mindset, don't have the freshness, the courage, the willingness, the sense of adventure that you have. And by the way, I don't want to forget to say that the artwork behind me is also by you.
Yes.
One of your creations.
Yes.
And so talk about that. Talk about the mindset, the growth mindset that has nothing to do with that chronological age.
I'm not sure I'm following the growth mindset.
Yeah, that's what I see in you. Right, I see people who are chronologically older, and they've kind of settled. Like, they just, all they do is watch TV, and they're biding their time. And they get set in their ways. They're no longer willing to dive within and to do the work that I know that you're doing in terms of healing yourself, healing others, being that instrument of healing for others. So what is that? What can you say about that?
What comes to mind when you're saying this is again something from my late husband, and then something from it was very important to him that he be interested and interesting both. And I think being interested in others is a big part of staying young, because we stay on top of what's going on in our world, in our friends' lives, in our family, and being curious. I think being curious is another big piece. If we're curious, there'll always be something for us to be engaged in. Always. When we're curious. When we stop being curious, when we stop being interested, I think that's it.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful and powerful. And you brought up Tom a couple of times. your ex-husband who left us about a year ago, a little bit, year and a half ago. And one of the words that he also loved and spoke about frequently was possibility. What does that mean to you in relation to what we're talking about?
There's not an I can't. It's what came up for me right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, Tina, that you embody that as well. And I think that along with everything else you said, that attitude of curiosity, sense of adventure, the courage, that it takes to continue diving within, in that process of growth and never settling, never becoming stagnant. I think that's also what keeps us in that mindset of youth.
I think you're right. Yeah, but that being curious too, I feel there's another piece. It's being childlike and not childish. For some reason, my youngest grandson just came to mind, Rowan, and he's still in that playful stage because he's under 10, so he gets into a lot of mischief and things, and just exploring with him has been fun. We'll be driving along sometimes and we'll see something on the side of the road and just stop and just get out of the car and just explore what's there. What's that about? Again, curiosity, questions,
I love that. And I know they've done some studies about the brain and the aging process of the brain. And, we get stuck in these ruts that we know we take the same route to go home, from home to the office or home to the grocery store. And what the study indicates, that if we just deviate and go explore, go a different route, that is actually creating new connections in our neurons in the brain, and that keeps the brain younger. And that's, I think that's another way of describing what you're talking about.
I think so. Yeah. Different neural pathways.
Yeah.
It's like what's behind you. I'm just seeing those as pathways. I hadn't seen it that way before, but they're just different pathways.
I love that. With different and new connections every time you look at it.
Yeah. And hopefully that's the way it is for us in life.
Yes.
That we can see with fresh eyes when we're looking out at the same scenery, because nothing's ever the same.
That's right.
Even though it seems like it is, it's not. Yeah.
And that brings us back to presence. Like when we are present, you have to be present to notice that.
True.
Because if we're walking around in our heads, futurizing about our to-do list or grocery store list, or about the argument that we're going to have when I get home, or rehashing the argument what we had last night, it's like we miss all that stuff. We're not present.
Right.
We're intentionally keeping these conversations short. And so as we begin to wrap up our time together, tell us a little bit about your work as a healer. Like we spoke a little bit about creativity and your artwork and your photography. Tell us a little bit about your healing work.
Wow. It's really along the same lines as what we've been talking about. It's that being present to ourselves. The latest work that I've become involved with is called Essential Motion, and it's about embodied self-awareness. And it's the relationship that we have with ourselves, and all the experiences that we have had from birth to whatever age it is that we are, and how those experiences shape and form us. And
having been on your table and experience your work, I hadn't even made this connection, but it goes back to that same quality of presence, because I've witnessed and received your work, and it's very subtle. I mean, I want one expression of it. I haven't done the essential motion work with you, So I don't know that much about it. I think that's more about an embodiment practice, as I understand it. But having been on the table with you doing, I think it was Rosen work, that's very subtle. You, as opposed to other different types of body work, it's very subtle and you just touch. But what impressed me and what I've heard fed back to you is how present you were.
Mhm. Well, again, and thank you for that. It is that piece about you have to be present to win. And so if I'm going to be able to be helpful in any way to anybody who's on my table, I need to give them my full presence. And what I'm inviting them to do is be present to themselves, because nobody is doing the work for anybody else.
Right.
All we do is holding space. I mean, the ultimate work is done by the person themselves. And they do it by being in a safe environment where they can explore whatever is going on within them. And many times there are places within that we have become disconnected from. Or we kind of like the dive analogy. I'm just realizing, because sometimes there's a part of us that's hidden so deep, it's protected, and then we don't know or have become disconnected with the layers, the protection that we've put in between, that we don't need anymore, but we didn't even know that we had erected those barriers. So when somebody's able to help you to access an entry to that part of yourself, then you can go do the exploring, and you're the only one who can do that exploring. But you're in a safe environment, and so the chances or the likelihood is greater that you'll be able to do that for yourself, and then come out a little bit more whole and healed.
I love that, because I know there are a lot of people and who'll be watching this who are healers or have some knowledge somewhere deep inside them that they are being called to step into that role of teacher or healer. That's the kind of people that gravitate to this kind of work for the most part. And when I speak to my apprentices for breath work, two of the things that you mentioned are like critical, like holding space, right? That is so important. So being able to hold the space in which the healing can happen.
Yes.
Because we don't cause the healing. We create the necessary conditions so that it can happen.
Right.
And in order to be able to hold that space at that level, you've got to be present.
You have to be present. We also have to have done our own work, which is it's an interesting piece, because and if I haven't done my work and I have somebody on my table who has some of my issues, then we may meet right there, but we may not be able to get, into that deeper place. So that's also an interesting part of all of this.
Exactly. And we talk about it in the breathwork apprenticeship as well. It's like equally important knowing what music to play when to flip somebody on their side. What's the difference between a suspension and a suspended breath? Is clearing our own stuff.
Yeah.
So that when we are fully present, holding space for somebody else, like our stuff doesn't get triggered and get in the way.
That's right. Yeah.
Tina, thank you so much for spending time with us, for sharing your wisdom, your incredible connection to beauty and your presence, for guiding us to drop into the current. Are any final words, anything that you want to say to anybody who might be watching this, who might be wanting to step more fully into their call as an artist or as a healer?
Wow. I think the biggest thing is practicing returning to each moment. I really believe that's it. That's what I'd say. That's my big practice right at the moment. It's always been underlying, but it becomes clearer and clearer with every day almost how important that is. Because in this moment, everything is in this moment. And I'm safe in this moment. You're safe in this moment. You know.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So we'll, on that beautiful, profound note, we'll part ways. Thank you again for sharing yourself and your time with us. Thank you everybody for watching this, and we'll see you soon with another soulful conversation.
And thank you for who you are and for all that you do and to give to us. Thank you.